Welcome to the Film and Cinematography Podcast. What's up, guys? I'm Alex, and welcome to a new episode of the Filmmaking and Cinematography Podcast. And today, let's talk about microphones. These tools are our day-to-day helper when it comes to filmmaking because, as you may know it, sound is half of the viewing experience and sound design is really important. You can have the best video ever, the best talking headshot ever, but if you have some trash audio, nobody is going to watch your video, nobody is going to listen to your podcast, or nobody is going to view your film. So this means that sound is that important. Now, strictly regarding the mics, let's talk about some types of mic. At first, there are some shotgun mics, which are going to mostly use in movies when it comes to capturing the voice of the character the most crisp and clear as possible. After that, we have the podcast mics, like I'm using here. And those can be again used for films too, when you're going to record the talking of the characters afterwards, but I strongly recommend to record it on the set for the most natural experience. But podcast mics are, like the name said, used mostly for podcasts. I have been using for all of my talking headshots, YouTube videos and everything here, even this podcast, some really cheap mic, and I'm going to explain how I've got that crisp clear sound also from that $10 mic. But for this episode, I'm using the Shure SM7B, one of the best microphones that you can get in this category. But let's see how you can make some really cheap mic sound as it would be a professional podcast mic. The first thing I did is to buy a receiver. You can have whatever microphone you can get, even the most expensive one, but if you have some trash receiver, then you're not going to get the quality that mic is intended for. But also, on the other hand, if you have some not so great microphone with a super expensive receiver, you're again not going to use the full potential of that receiver. Okay, but the question still remains, how I managed to get that really good sound from some really cheap microphone. It's not even a brand, it's like a no-name brand. So how I managed to get this? So let me tell you. At first was the receiver, which I've got a receiver from Behringer. It's also not the best one that I could get, but it's a really good quality for what I needed it to be. After that, regarding the mic, you can't really say that a no-name brand can't do its job well, because the job of a mic is just to record the sound. So it's not going to be affected by anything like a quality of a microphone. Of course, that does still matter, but the mic that I've got is a no-name brand that is used for karaoke. So it is really good for vocals. Microphones in their core, so the circuitry inside it, isn't that complex. Even the Shure SM7B isn't that complex compared to some digital stuff. It's just some simple analog circuit. But of course, this mic was actually tuned better and it's of course on a better quality. But still, regarding the $10 mic, the thing that I did is to take it apart and I resoldered the cables so that it can be much more better when it comes to quality. Of course, you don't need to do that if you don't know yourself with soldering, but the reason I did it is not for actually to get better sound, but more because it was just it didn't work all of the time, so just some resoldering of the wires did the job well. And then the thing that helped me the most when it came to this is to keep the mic really close to the mouth. Also, this meant that I needed to have a really low volume in the receiver, because if I would have it at maximum, then I will be always clipping. So by keeping the gain down but having the mic really close to the mic, like between 5 and 10 centimeters, or even less if possible, then you're going to remove all the echo that comes from around the chamber. Also, you're going to remove stuff like noise behind you, because the mic is just going to be focusing on your voice and nothing else. Of course, here are the places where more expensive mics like the Shure stand out from the crowd, because they can do this job by eliminating the echo and eliminating the noise around us much better than a cheap mic. But there are also some more tips that I can give you to just get the best sound out of your mic regarding the noise and the echo. So at first, try to record in a not so echoey room. In my studio, for example, I have a lot of stuff laying around. Beside the things that you see in the frame, there is a couch, a bed, and so on. All of these are pretty soft materials, so they all don't bounce sound back to the mic. If you are recording in a room with just walls, then you're going to have a lot of bounce sound around your room and resulting in a lot of echo. And now, after you have everything alright to not have any echo around you and not have anything like this, then you can take the next step to build, let's say, your mic, is to add some foam around it. One thing I did is to buy a really cheap $1-2 dead cat that I then cut out and placed over my mic, and this immensely reduced the popping noise that you can hear from cheap microphones, and this will definitely do the difference when it comes to talking really close to the microphone. Because if you don't have enough foam around your mic like a more expensive mic would have, then you're going to have a lot of popping noises like you can see here. Okay, so actually from this mic you won't going to hear any popping noises, but from a not so expensive one you're going to have a lot of them. So by adding a lot of foam around your mic, then you're definitely going to hear the difference. Also, you can just take some sponges and put it around the mic if you're just going to use it for a podcast where you don't going to need to film it. But like in my case, if you're going to do some talking headshots and you need it like a podcast mic that is going to be visible in the frame, then you can just purchase a really cheap dead cat and it's going to do its job. Okay, so now you can just start recording and talking into the mic as it would be a really professional mic. And then now in the editing room you have then multiple options. The most easy one, but with a little downside, is to use Adobe Podcast Enhance. If your audio is still not good enough as you intended it to be, then you can just throw in into Adobe Podcast Enhance and you're going to be perfectly fine with the audio quality. Of course, here are some small downsides, like I did some tests on some recent YouTube video. You can see that the quality of Adobe enhancement isn't that good if you're not going to have also some quality in the mic. But if you just have some noise, some echo, then Adobe will do its job perfectly fine. Of course, there are also some really small downsides. You have an upload limit of 1 hour of content, and if you have like a really long 3-4 hour podcast, then you might need to split it, and it's also going to take a little while until Adobe will process the whole data. But there are also some other things that you can do. In my case, I don't ever take my audio through some other processing tools, even not through Adobe Podcast Enhance, only if the audio is like not good to be published. But in any other cases, I don't do that, and most people will be perfectly fine with this. But if you want to get even more, then you can use it in Adobe Audition. This is the tool I have been using for some time, and I just select the part where there is some noise, and I often leave some 1 minute room tone at the beginning of each recording so that I can just select that part into Adobe Audition, and the AI and stuff behind it is going to process and remove the noise. And there are also some effects that do the same thing like Adobe Podcast Enhance. And also, if you're going to use Final Cut, then the same effects can be applied there too. Also, one thing I'm also adding, this is only in Final Cut where I do the final cut of the podcast, a gain equalizer, so that I have for the entire duration of the podcast or for the episode to have the same sound level, so that sometimes if I'm going accidentally some centimeters away from my mic, the sound won't just drop, and if I come too close it's going to be too loud and a bit disturbing. And now, after you get all these things around, then you have a really decent mic that you can record podcasts on, to create your talking headshots and so on. But I almost forgot at the beginning of the episode I mentioned about some types of microphone. And the last type I personally use, of course there are much more types, and I'm not a professional sound guy to really tell you about everything that is part of the sound industry. I'm talking about this from the vision of a filmmaker. I also use a lot a wireless microphone, which is the DJI mic, which also when I record talking headshots, I connect the DJI mic transmitter to the receiver of the Shure microphone, and the receiver of the DJI mic is connected then into the camera, and everything is perfectly synced. When I'm in the editing room, I don't need to sync out the clips recorded from the microphone with the clips recording from the camera, and then I need to do some lip syncing here and there just to be sure that everything sounds really good. And that's what I wanted to tell you about microphones. Of course, now after you recorded the sound for whatever you're going to use, even if you have some talking headshots for an interview, for example, or some after recording Foley that you're going to use in your sound design, or whatever you're going to use, now the editing process will start. And this, as always, is a complete other episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you learned something new, and see you next time. Welcome to the Film and Cinematography Podcast.